What's up, DC Nation? Welcome back to another video on Batman The Adventures Continue. Now, previously on this series, we first know that it's a continuation from Batman The New Adventures and Batman The Animated Series, of course, right? But we've been seeing the Bat family, Batman, Alfred, Batgirl, Tim Drake, Robin, go against villains like Lex Luthor, Deathstroke. We saw Batman actually team up with Superman. We saw many characters show up so far. But the main thing in this series so far is that Batman's trying to track down this person who's stalking the Bat family. Now, as the audience or the reader, we know this is Jason Todd. He's in this universe, he's the Red Hood, and something happened between him and Batman. Now, in this new story arc we're diving in today, we're not going to find out what actually happened yet. This is actually a two-part story arc about Azrael, who he shows up. We see characters like Penguin, Mr. Freeze. But there's actually a story arc that starts to lead into the Jason Todd stuff. Because the next story that we'll be covering on this channel in the next video is called Red Sun Rising, which just shows like Jason Todd's origin as Robin, how he pretty much what happens to him with the Joker. It's gonna be really interesting, but I still think we should dive into this pretty much story arc, which is issue number 7 and 8 of the series, because it's actually pretty cool. We see Azrael don the Batman costume, team up with Batman, and go against villains like Penguin, Mr. Freeze, and Joker makes a cameo. So it's gonna be really cool, guys. I hope you enjoy it. But yeah, guys, without further ado, let's dive into issue number 7. The issue starts out with Batman chasing Catwoman, aka Selena Kyle, over rooftops in Gotham City. Now, you see pretty much Catwoman, she has like this briefcase, she has something in it. And Batman's chasing her, and he actually almost gets her. She's like, "You want it? Here." And so she throws at him, he catches it, and she's like, "Bye-bye, Batboy." And she actually blows a kiss at him. So it shows that relationship between Batman and Catwoman still sticks in this Batman Animated Series universe. But as we continue, we see her get hit by pretty much this rope, and she gets caught in it. She's like, "What the heck?" And Azrael shows up. And Batman then tries to actually start to go after Catwoman because she's in trouble. So Azrael takes her away, and they're actually on top of a rooftop, and he has a big sword, guys. It's a flaming sword, and she's like, "Okay, you can start chasing me again." Because before, she was like, "Alright, see you, Batman." But now she's like, No, I actually need help." But that's when Batman shows up on the rooftop, and when he's about to show up, he actually thinks, "Wait, is this the stalker that's been stalking the Bat family this whole time?" But he starts to think, I don't think so. But he starts to go toward the rooftop, but there's this whole water tank that just gets knocked over by Azrael, and Batman gets hit, right? But he barely catches himself. He swings through the rooftops, and he makes it down. Now, Catwoman is dumped on the floor by Azrael, and she says, "Who are you? A substitute member of the Bat Gang, or just a weirdly dressed wannabe?" And Azrael says, "I'm from St. Dumas, where's the shawl?" Which the shawl is something that Catwoman stole. And Catwoman says, "The shawl, that rag, you gotta be kidding me." And he says, "I never kid. The loss of an eye could make you see that." Now, I really like this because, come on, Azrael, this shows Azrael's character in this universe. He's willing to take out Catwoman's eye just to find out where this thing is, right? That she stole. But as we continue, we see that then Azrael, before he can hit Catwoman, his whole sword is taken out by a batarang. Now, we see Batman, he's like, "No one's losing anything tonight except me and my patience." Now, Azrael says, "This is my business, brother. Stay back." And Batman says, "Oh, I thought Deathstroke was quick." But they start fighting, and Jason Todd is watching from afar. Now, Azrael, Batman, they're having a cool fight, and Batman's like, "He's fast, I'll give him that, but familiar." And Batman says, "For a moment, I thought you were somebody who's been watching me." And Azrael says, "I assure you, I'm not." And Batman's like, "I believe you." So Batman pretty much rules him out because he thought, wait, is this a guy who's been watching the Bat family? But as the reader, we know it's actually Jason Todd who's watching Batman. But we see Batman, he continues to monologue in his head. He says, "We fought before a lifetime ago. Yes, I know him. Best to end this now. Let's hope that mask doesn't include the nose filters." So Batman throws like a gas bomb. It hits Azrael's face, but it actually gets inside his nose. Azrael gets shot back, and Batman's like, "Okay, it doesn't." So Azrael's actually affected by this. Now that's when Azrael says, "You always were the trickster, next time." So Batman says he reacted quickly enough not to get knocked out, but still, he knows the gas will slow down his reflexes. So Azrael knows when to stop the fight. Like, he's not like, "Oh, no, I can keep fighting, I'm good." No, he's like, "Man, I just got hit by gas, I can barely see, I'm gonna leave." He's actually pretty smart. But we then see, from afar, Jason Todd watches. He's like, "I gotta say, never a dull moment." Now, we see Batman goes to Catwoman. He's like, "Tell me about the shawl." And Catwoman says, "Yeah, I stole it from some monastery. The shawl Madeline, they called it." And Batman's like, "Medallion." And he says, "It's sacred to those priests. It's supposed to have healing properties." And Catwoman goes to the Batman. She's like, "That's so, maybe I should put it over your hearts." Now, that's when Batman says, "Get serious, Selena. It's a vengeful god who rules over the Order of St. Dumas." He says, "They'll have no mercy for what you've done. You have to give it back." And Catwoman says, "But I don't have it. I was just a job. I was paid to steal it." And Batman's like, "But by whom?" And Batman says, "You better tell me, otherwise there'll be no rest for you. If this man is who I think he is, he'll never stop. And the longer you make him wait, the harsher the punishment." And Catwoman says, "I'll be ready for him." And Batman says, "All you have to do is give me a name, Selena. I can handle the rest." And he continues to say, "You have to trust me. I can protect you. I promise." And that's when Catwoman is apprehended by the police. And the police says, "Come on, kid. Got a nice warm pillow and a glass of milk for you at the end of the ride." Now, Commissioner Gordon is talking to Batman, and he says, "A 24-hour guard? You expecting trouble?" And Batman's like, "It's already here." Now, that's when he gets a beat from Alfred. He's like, "Yes," and Alfred says, "Pardon me, sir, but your presence is requested at home as soon as possible. You have a visitor." And it's funny, guys, you see Azrael has a sword to Alfred's neck. I'm like, dang it, Alfred is so chill. Like, it just shows how good Alfred is. Like, so if I was in that position, I was like, dang, I have a flaming sword next to my neck. I'd be like, "Bruce, get home now." Or like, "Batman, get home now." But instead he's like, "Master Bruce, you need to get home like immediately. But if you have to have a detour, it's cool." Like, that's pretty much how Alfred is here. He looks so chill, which I really like that. But we fast forward, and Azrael finds out that Batman is actually Bruce Wayne. Now, Bruce knows that he's Sean Paul Valley, Azrael, right? And Azrael says, "I always harbor a suspicion that the famous Batman was you, Bruce. It wasn't until we fought tonight that I knew for sure. I always admired your defensive skills, even as a student." And Batman says, "Is that why you've taken to wearing that costume?" And Azrael says, "You know what? They say when in Rome." And he says, "I felt tracking down the cat would be more effective if I had imposing armor more akin to the infamous Dark Knight." He continues to say, "I was right. Gotham's lowlifes were always eager to assist me." And Batman says, "Perhaps too imposing, John Paul." And then John Paul says, "It's Azrael. Now, the name given to me by the clerics, I wonder what they would call you." And Batman says, "Too bad I couldn't stick around long enough to find out." And Azrael says, "I wasn't surprised. You never wore into it for the long run, just for certain disciplines and the ancient art of war. You seem to skip out on the church part altogether." And Batman says, "I've always been a late sleeper." Azrael says to Bruce, he's like, "You probably didn't believe in the power of the shawl either." And Batman says, "Let's just say that if I needed medical help, I'd probably choose a physician over a piece of cloth." And Azrael says, "You know she'll have to suffer for taking it. It wasn't her idea. She was working for someone, and he has it now. She even told me who it was." And Azrael says, "Who?" And Bruce is like, "That depends on how reasonable you can be." What Bruce says here is, "Hey, if you just put Catwoman to the side, don't go after her, I'll tell you who she gave that to, and we can actually go after this person together. Batman and Azrael working together." And that's when Azrael says, "Sure." So actually, Azrael gets a new costume too, which is just a costume from the comics, the Batman costume. Now, we see them show up to the Iceberg Lounge, and we see Penguin's like, "Well, isn't this nice and civilized? Batman and his cousin here pay me an after-hours visit without delivering so much as a single concussion to my staff." Now, he's going to drink some wine, and Penguin says, "Can I interest either of you in a little arsenic?" And that's what Batman says, "All we want is a shawl, Penguin." That's when a Penguin keeps drinking. He's like, "Well, I don't mean to ruffle your feathers, boys, but I was merely the middleman in that transaction. I simply took the shawl from Catwoman and passed it on to its current owner, who would rather remain anonymous of accord." But that's when Azrael, with the Batman costume, which looks really dope, grabs Penguin, starts putting him against the wall. And Batman is like, "Azrael." And that's when Azrael's like, "Don't fool with us, Cobblepot. We want a name." And Penguin's like, "By all means, I'll give you one, Mr. Wing." And then he says, "He's my new wingman, Batman, and the last name either of you will ever hear." And you see this big wing guy, he's pretty much just a big bird, get right behind Batman and Azrael. Now they got to fight off against this thing. Now that's how issue number 7 ends, but going into issue number 8, what we see is the big bird says, "First week on the job, I'm icing Batman, this loser. Looks like I got a bonus coming, Mr. C." And that's what Penguin says, "Just finish them quick, Wing." And that's what Batman says, "Sword of salvation." That's when he kicks apart, both him and Azrael get away. And that's what Batman says, "Can't tell me you didn't skip Avesters now and then to learn that move." And Azrael says, "You take the Birdman, Cobblepot is mine." So Batman fights off against this Birdman, and he says, "I wouldn't spend that bonus money just yet, Mr. Wing." And he actually then flips this Birdman on his back, And he says Penguin is notoriously cheap, and he doesn't reward failure. And that's what he could use to say, though, maybe he'll kick in for your medical bills. So he throws this Birdman into a desk, and that's when we see he actually beat this Birdman easily. You know why he did so easily? Because he's Batman. Like, come on, like that's just why. Like, really, in real life, would you actually be a big Birdman like that? Like, that looks like a bird on steroids. But Batman, he can take down anybody. Fought against Bane. Like, come on. Bane is super powerful. Batman fought against freaking Superman, an alien so strong that he can just take you out in one hit. So yeah, Batman's just, super cool. But continuing, what we see is Azrael lifts Penguin over this balcony, and Batman says, did the Penguin name his client? And Azrael says, oh yeah, he's listening. Batman looks at Penguin, he's just beat up. Like, Azrael beat the crap out of him. Now, that's when Azrael dumps him off of the balcony, and you see him say, though of course, since he is Catwoman's employer, the order of demands he must suffer in her place. So he dumps Penguin over the side. Penguin's like, no, he's fallen to his death, but then Batman gets a battering, latches on the Penguin, pulls him back up. Now, that's when Batman says, Azrael, where'd you go? So Azrael got away, but from a distance you see Jason Todd watching this. And he says his head, you're slipping, old man, letting someone else pull the vanishing act on you. That's when we see Jason Todd, he's over like a gargoyle, and gets used to say, better pull your head out of your cape. I want you to see what's coming. So Jason Todd's like, come on, Batman, you gotta be better than this. I want our whole reunion to be really cool, like really epic, right? Like, and Jason Todd do some bad stuff, right? But continuing, we see Batman's Batmobile. He's going back to Alfred and says, Penguin's still in intensive care, Alfred. By the time you can tell me anything, Azrael may have left dozens of bodies scattered across Gotham. And Alfred says, on that rather morbid note, sir, the Batcomputer just picked up an alert transmitted over GCP frequency. And Batman says, what is it? And Alfred continues to say, it concerns a grave robbing that might interest you. And then we see that Azrael is showing up to this one place, and he sees like this pretty much person, and this blanket is over them, and he opens it, but he's shocked by this ice, right? And Azrael says, who is this? And then this person says, I'll be taking that back. And Azrael says, I should have known, Mr. Freeze. And he says, if anyone in Gotham craved the healing powers of the shawl of Magdalene, it would be Mr. Freeze. He's like, I understand your grief, friend. And you see Mr. Freeze, he's looking dope, guys. He's actually shooting at Azrael. And Mr. Freeze says, I doubt that. And Azrael says, I know you helped create the treatment that revived her. And they're talking about Nora, right? The wife of Mr. Freeze, who's just pretty much dead, that could be brought back if she's iced right. Now, Azrael says, only to watch from afar as her body later rejected the cure. Truly the angels are sad for you both. Now, Mr. Freeze then looks at him. He goes to pretty much the place where his dead wife is, and he says, I don't need tears, holy man, just a shawl. And Azrael says, it won't work on the dead. And Mr. Freeze says, it will, it must. It says, I won't lose her again. He then shoots at Azrael, and then you see Batman, he shows up to the same place. And he's monologuing his head, and he says, Mr. Freeze, why don't you use this abandoned ice rink to store his equipment? It's a logical place to begin my search. Now, I continue to say, especially when I learned that the corpse taken from the grave was that of his wife, Nora Freeze. And then he says, the rumored powers of the shawl offer a tempting hope to a man desperate to revive his dead wife. That makes Freeze more than willing to destroy anyone who gets his way, and apparently has. So he flashes his light, you see that Azrael's been just frozen, totally. So Azrael's in a bad situation, and he's gonna die soon. But then you see Mr. Freeze show out of nowhere behind Batman. He says, your friend has perhaps 60 seconds left, Batman. And he says, if his pupils aren't completely frozen, he still might be able to see this. And Batman says his head, desperation has driven him insane. Only way to reach him, and I hate to do this. He kicks the dead body of Nora Freeze at Mr. Freeze. And Mr. Freeze is like, no, Nora, I got you. He holds his dead wife. He's like, rest, my love. He'll pay for this. You dare harm her. And Batman says, I'm sorry, Victor. I can't let him die because you won't accept the truth. Nora is gone. Neither science nor faith will change that. Now let me help you. And Mr. Freeze says, I need nothing from you. And that's what Batman says, yes you do. And he throws a battering at Mr. Freeze's like pretty much helmet, and it cracks it open. Now Mr. Freeze is just dying quickly, right? Because he needs to have pretty much a certain temperature to stay alive. Now, he falls to the ground. That's where Batman freezes Mr. Freeze to keep him alive, but knock him out. But that's what Batman says his mind. This will keep Victor breathing until the cops arrive. and they says sonic pulses are cracking the ice like the glass of Victor's helmet. And he says, but will that be enough to save John Paul? He slowly starts to melt the ice that's on John Paul, aka Azrael. Now, Azrael gets out, but Batman says barely a pulse. He need a miracle. And it says, John Paul's right. I always skip the church part. Now, that's when he goes over, gets the blanket, puts it on Azrael. It's like, right now I can use a more eloquent prayer than here goes nothing. Then we fast forward and we find out that Azrael actually survived. So guys, this whole sequence between Mr. Freeze, Batman, and Azrael, it was cool, but it kind of went a little too quick, in my opinion. Like, I wanted to see more. Like, it was cool that Mr. Freeze got beaten, right? It's kind of messed up that you see his dead wife. It's like, dang, I felt bad for Victor. Like, come on. Like, who can't feel bad for Mr. Freeze, right? But still, you got Batman, takes him down easily. But then seeing him actually save Azrael, it would have been cool if we saw Batman actually free Azrael and that's it. Instead of, okay, he's about to free him, but then we fast forward to see them just talking. Like, But guys, going to sequence with Batman and Azrael talking, how this talk begins is Azrael says, a candle to honor the dead. And Bruce says, and one for the recovery of the man who loved her. And Azrael says, you surprised me, Bruce. There's a great compassion beneath the grim facade you've adopted. And continues to say, one might almost call it saintly. And Bruce says, I wouldn't. And Azrael says, I owe you my life. And to the shawl, of course. So yes, they got the shawl, they completed the mission. And that's what Bruce says, I think your own resilience played the larger part in that way. And he says, but if that brings you comfort, so be it. And Azrael says, next time, old friend, I won't be so impulsive. My word on it. And Bruce says, there's going to be a next time? Pretty much he's questioning this, right? And Azrael says, if you need me, and Bruce says, I'll let you know. And thank you. So guys, when you see this whole bond between Azrael and Bruce, it's really strong now after the story arc. Now, going to the ending of this issue, which gets me really excited, and should get you guys excited for the next video. Now, how this issue ends is you see at the circus, at Batman's monologue, he's like, it hasn't always been easy for me to work with allies. And bitter experiences have taught me to appreciate them while I can. And can you just say, we never know what's coming next. Now, you see at the circuit, you see Joker just laying down cards, but in the background, you see Jason Todd. Jason Todd and Joker are going to meet again. Now, this is really dope, guys, because come on, if you know the relationship between Joker and Jason Todd, it's one of the most weird, like, one of the most, like, grimmest relationships in the whole DC universe. Like, Joker beat him with the crowbar, killed him. Jason Todd came back, and he actually almost killed Joker, but couldn't. And the latest issue of 3 Jokers, Batman 3 Jokers, actually issue number 1, you saw Jason Todd shoot Joker and kill him. So it shows how deep this grim relationship is, and it's going to be exciting diving into what happened to Jason Todd next video. I'll most likely just cover issue number 9 and 10, and then you do issue number 11 and 12, and then I'm guessing after that, we'll just see what happens, alright? Because so far, when I'm filming this video, I think there's only like 11 issues out in the series, so we're actually catching up really fast, which is really good, so then we can just start putting out videos on this series when they just come out immediately, alright? So stay tuned for that, guys. But yeah, guys, overall, this issue, this whole storyline, The Darker Knight of Batman Adventures Continue, an 8 out of 10. I think it's solid. It's a solid story arc that, yeah, it's cool to see Azrael, it's cool to see Penguin, Mr. Freeze, but it does go by a little too fast. Like, times I'm like, alright, I want to see a little more, but at the same time, the ending, the final page, we see Jason Todd going after Joker, that just gets me so stoked for a next storyline, which I'll be explaining in the next video, which is Red Sun Rising. Yeah, guys, like the video, give a big thumbs up, and jump, subscribe to my next Batman Adventures Continue video. And guys, in the comments below, tell me about this issue. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What do you think about Azrael in this whole storyline? Did you like him donning that Batman costume again? Did you like him teaming up with Bruce? And how you, like, what do you think about how Penguin and Mr. Freeze were treated in the storyline? Like, I was proud that, like, they got beat up, but it was still cool to see them. But, like, do you wish we got more of them? I honestly wish we got a little more of them. But I get this is a digital series, so there's only so much you can fit in the storyline, right? But yeah, guys, thanks for watching, and peace out.